Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. This is your host, Jim Harshaw, and if you can't tell, my voice is a little rough and I've got bronchitis. So I'm going to keep this short, and I'm going to share with you an interview that I did on another show just recently. It's the most fun I've ever had being interviewed. I mean, we covered so much stuff, and it was a long interview, so I broke this into 2 episodes for a little easier listening and consumption for you. But I have one action plan from both episodes. So everything that I share, Leica broke down and put into an action plan for you. And you can get that by just going to jimharshawjr.com/action, and you can download that. And what you'll find in this episode is I talk a lot about my story, but also dealing with failure. I talk about finding work-life balance. I talk about how you can follow your passion. I talk about all these different things, and we just cover such a wide variety of things. I think you're going to really get a lot of value out of this. So without further ado, this is my interview on a show called I Love Seville, which is Charlottesville, but it's called I Love Seville with Jerry Miller. Here we go.
Guys, welcome to the I Love Seville show. It's Jerry Miller. It's great to be with you on a chilly Thursday here in Charlottesville, Virginia. We are live on the I Love Seville network across Charlottesville, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world. Jim Harshaw, our guest, entrepreneur, father, podcast host. This gentleman is very dynamic, a Renaissance man, if you may. We're going to welcome him to the program in T-minus 45 seconds to spotlight his journey as a former All-American wrestler, as the youngest coach at the time in wrestling in college athletics, 26. He's been a TEDx speaker. I've watched his business grow firsthand, someone who undoubtedly understands how to leverage social and digital and mobile to build a power brand. T-minus 45 seconds for Jim. We are an advertising agency here at I Love Seville and VMV Brands on the first and second floors of the Macklin Building in downtown Charlottesville. We represent hundreds of clients. 2 of our favorites, Interstate Pest and Service Companies, and Dr. Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. We represent all aspects of those brands. Interstate started in 1969 with the first generation of the company, Mr. Robert Wells, who has since passed away. He used his personal truck and sweat equity and pay phones around Charlottesville to build a business. Today, the company has 4 generations of family working in it and almost 100 employees, a Commonwealth-wide working footprint. Truly a success story. Dr. Wagner, another one. Dr. Wagner started his business with himself and a couple of chiropractic assistants. Today, 6 chiropractors at Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine, physical therapy, sports medicine, chiropractic care. He is building a behemoth. In fact, the #1 chiropractic office from a production standpoint in the United States of America, right here in Charlottesville, Virginia. All right, Judah Wickhauer, you're the director. My friend, you and I have worked together for 7.5 years. Why don't we start with the studio cam and then go to the 2-shot and welcome Jim Harshaw to the program. Good afternoon, Jim.
Yeah, good afternoon, Jerry. Good to see you, man.
It's good to see you, too. The last time we were doing this was on television,
yes,
on NBC
on
29.
That's right.
I think it was the Cavalier Wrestling Club.
Yes.
Is that memory serve
That's right. It is exactly right.
You have wrestling and competition and being the best version of yourself in your blood. I would love to get to know what makes Jim Harshaw tick.
Man, I grew up a blue-collar kid in Western Pennsylvania, first-generation college, going to college, getting a college degree in my family. Wrestling's in my blood, and then I come to University of Virginia, and that place just opened the world up to me. So I'm a hodgepodge of tons of different experiences, and I think that's what qualifies me so well to coach, right? To be a personal performance coach. It's just, this blue-collar background, going to a great top school like the University of Virginia. I've been a business owner. I've been a leader. I've been in a lot of leadership roles as youngest Division I head coach in the country, as you mentioned at the time, at Slippery Rock University, and multiple-time entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. Was a fundraiser at the University of Virginia in athletics for 7 years, major gift officer. So, man, a lot of those things make me tick. And then the number one thing that makes me tick is my family, wife and 4 kids. So, that's a little bit about me.
We have a lot in common. Let's talk West Virginia childhood. What was it like?
Virginia.
Oh, is it Virginia?
I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Yeah. Childhood, man. Dude, it was, a lot of splitting wood.
Yeah.
A lot of hunting.
Yeah.
A lot of snow.
Okay. Outdoors
and
guy.
a lot of wrestling. Outdoors guy, man.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I love Charlottesville so much, is like it's so easy to get outdoors here. You got the mountains just a half an hour to the west, so we try to get up to the mountains. We like to get up to the mountains more than we do. We're spending our weekends at soccer games and baseball games and gymnastics events and whatnot with the kids these days.
You have 3 kids?
4.
Four
of
kids.
them. Yeah, we got a pile. We got a boatload. So 6 through 14.
Wow.
So the boys are 12 and 14, and the girls are 6 and 9. So yeah, it's a busy household at the Harshaw home.
You got an army there. So how would you characterize childhood? Would you say good one, tough? How would you characterize?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just a lot of love, a lot of work.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to rest on our laurels, but it was a lot of work. Like I said, blue collar and rural area, just a great childhood. My parents always wanted the best for us and gave us the opportunities just to improve ourselves. And thankfully, I found the sport of wrestling, which really opened up doors for me. I was a hard worker in school, not so smart necessarily, but I worked hard enough to get good grades, and I was good enough of a wrestler to get into the University of Virginia. So, that opened the whole world to me.
If you guys would like to relay some perspective to Jim, just put it in the chat box of the 12 Facebook pages.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Scott, is it Hadante?
Scott Hanty
is watching in Maryland right now.
Scott.
He says he comes from an awesome family. 5 different states are watching the show. Ed Brown says hello. Dana Thiel says hello.
Yeah, Dana. Just worked out with her husband Bob this morning.
Give it a like and a share. Okay, talk to me about migrating to the University of Virginia.
Yeah, okay. So let me mention, Dana Thiel, her husband Bob, I don't know if you got to get the F3 guys on here sometime. So F3 is this awesome workout organization. It's totally free, open to all men, and there's a bunch of us that work out all over the city of Charlottesville. Anyway, so shout out to Bob. I know Dana's out there watching. So anyway, your question, you asked me, sorry, was it about University of Virginia?
Yeah, so you go to arguably the #1 public university in the country as a talented wrestler. It's for those that are watching that don't know, very rigorous. I went there, just being a normal student. I can't even imagine doing it as an athlete and then also balancing academics.
Yeah.
What appealed to you about UVA?
So I should mention it was #1 when we went to school, and I think maybe since we graduated, maybe they kind of look at us on the alumni list. Maybe we got to bump them back a little bit if Jim and Jerry can go to school there. So I was, I was generally a successful high school wrestler, but when I got to UVA, I was the low guy on the totem pole. Like everybody that I was, teammates with, they were all state champions or multiple time state place winners. And I was just kind of a guy who was above average. I never made it onto the podium at the state championships. And I thought to myself, I hope I can make the team. It'd be cool if I can actually wrestle and compete all 4 years, maybe break the starting lineup at some point. Redshirted that first year, got the snot kicked out of me at practice by Mike Krafchick, who was an All-American that year, and there were like 6 guys in my weight class. So I think I was number 6 out of 6. And then just worked my butt off, and then that's all I really knew how to do. And so the next year, I made the starting lineup. So now I'm the starter on the Division I college wrestling team, and I had a decent season there, but I had set my goals. I was like, man, if I'm a starter, I want to be an All-American, which is top 8 in America. And set my goal to be an All-American, but first you have to qualify for the national championship. So I qualified for the national championships as a freshman, which was pretty exciting, but I got there and just bombed out, right? And junior year had the same goal. Man, I got to make top 8 All-American, right? Get to the national championships again, bomb out. Junior year, pretty much a repeat of the prior 2 years. And this goal of being an All-American just, seemed so unattainable to me. At the end of my junior year, I remember going to the locker room, sitting there with my face buried in a towel in tears, thinking like, why can't I do this? Like, what's wrong with me? Am I not good enough? Am I not smart enough? Am I not capable enough? Or like, maybe it's just not in the cards. Maybe just Jim doesn't have what it takes. And I went that whole off season, Jerry. I traveled to summer wrestling camps, like high school wrestling camps, and I was a camp counselor, and I just found as many people to train with as I could, right? So I go to all these different universities and Naval Academy and George Mason and Virginia's camp and on and on and on. I went to the Olympic Training Center, trained out there, and I was asking these Olympians and these elite performers, these elite athlete wrestlers, I was like, what am I missing, right? Do I got to get stronger? Do I got to get more flexible? What do I have to work on, right? And I went through that was my mission, so that my senior year I had a shot at being an All-American. And I never found the answer. Like literally, I went into my senior year. I remember it was the night before the West Virginia Open, and I'm in the hotel room, and I'm like, well, crap. I never found it out. I never figured it out. What's missing? Like, what's missing for me to reach my full potential? And I literally gave up. I gave up on the outcome that night. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to compete as hard as I possibly can. The goal's still there. I'd love to be, but you know what? If I get there, if I get great, if I don't, I'm going to sleep at night knowing that I'm just giving my best, right? And I woke up the next morning. I lit the competition up. I went 5-0 and had this great day. And I was like, man, that was fun. And I continued to wrestle with no pressure the rest of the season. And I just compete. I focused on the process, not the outcome. And I had so much fun that season. And I focused on my diet. I focused on my, what time I went to bed. I focused on, if I'd watch film or not, making sure I broke down film with my opponents and weight training and rehabbing injuries. And I just focused on the process, knowing that that's what I can control. But I don't control the outcome. I control the things that lead to outcomes. And lo and behold, I get to the national championships, and I beat the 4th ranked wrestler. I beat several guys before that, and then I beat the 4th ranked wrestler in the country, and on the number 1 ranked team in the country, and I'm an All-American. And I came away from that experience thinking like, wow, I think I just discovered something new, but didn't realize that this is like the basis of performance psychology. Like this is the basis of sports psychology, is focus on the process, not the outcome. And, for those of us here in Charlottesville, we hear Tony Bennett talk about that. We saw them do that, right? When they lost in the first round a couple years ago, and then they go on and win the national championship. The process is the same. Yeah, you have to learn from your failures, but you have to focus on that process. And so that was, I learned a tremendous amount in the classroom. My experience at UVA as a student was phenomenal. I learned equally as much as a student athlete, in the wrestling room and on the wrestling mats, and from my coaches, and going through the pain and suffering that it takes to be a student athlete at that level and to succeed at that level. And man, what a blessing that's been, and that's really the underpinning of my coaching philosophy now.
I can see why you were a hell of a coach. I literally have goosebumps.
Is it the ears? Is that what you saw?
I have goosebumps from that story here. I like to talk about kind of like the trials and tribulations. And we get seduced a lot, especially in the entrepreneurship world, of this being this like sexy endeavor. We get to make our own schedules, your own boss. We'll leave that to a side.
Sure.
And we'll get to it. I want to hear about the hardships, and you've touched on it, the hardships of being an All-American. What the sacrifices that you had to make to get to that point, tangibly.
Yes, yeah. So, we see the basketball and football teams. And we go, man, they travel and they have to go to a game on Saturday or a game on a Tuesday night or something like that in Miami, and then they fly home and they've got class the next day. Well, as a student athlete in a non-revenue sport, it's the same thing. Only you don't get the charter flight home. You're taking like the minivan, like or the bus home, and you're getting home 2 or 3 or 5 hours later than even those athletes. And not to take anything away, obviously, it's just a little bit of a different experience. But it's hard, right? You're showing up, you're rolling back into your dorm room or your apartment at like 2 a.m, and you got an 8 o'clock class and you got a test, and you have to have to be there. You have to show up. University of Virginia is a place where there's accountability, and you actually have to go to class, and you have to take the test, and you have to take them on time. And so that was a huge lesson for me, great experience. And I'll share this experience too. I lost. They've changed the weigh-in rules for those moms out there watching, and you don't want your kid to wrestle.
I was going to ask you
about
this
these weigh-in stuff.
Yeah.
It's like all the weigh-in rules have changed. So this is like back in my day kind of thing, right? So
this is the cut and weight topic, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Back in my day, you could lose a lot of weight and then weigh in, and then hydrate and eat food and go to bed and wake up the next day and then compete. And could recover. You can't do that anymore. You weigh in 1 hour before you wrestle. That's
really?
High school, college, and so all the weight cutting stuff that those nightmares are all gone, which is great. But my junior year, I lost. And I'm going to say this, and some people are kind of going to roll their eyes and probably click off this broadcast because they're going to think I'm lying. But those wrestlers out there know that this is possible and it's true. I lost 22 pounds in 2.5 days.
Get out.
It was just this. It was water. Right? I just sucked the water weight out of my body. And my body grew. I was a late bloomer. I grew through college, and I was just in a weight class I couldn't make weight anymore. So lost the weight, stepped on the scale, hydrated, ate, drank all night long, and recovered for the next day. Well, I never really fully recovered. It was an awful experience, worst experience of my life in terms of physically, going through that. And the next day, I remember we flew home. This was in Dallas. We flew home, and I actually I was about to tell my coach that, hey, I got to bump up a weight class because I can't make weight anymore. But unfortunately, the guy who was a weight class above me, we were both ranked like 15th in the country. So you had to have us both in the weight class, or had us have us both in the lineup. But they end up, literally the NCAA in the middle of the season for some other reasons, they changed the weigh-in rules. In the middle of the season, they added 7 pounds to every weight class. And I ended up staying in that weight class, and things worked out. But I tell you what, that was a trying experience, going through that use the term pain and suffering. And I'll reference another student athlete who I was good friends with, a guy named Mike Fisher. He was the NCAA soccer player, National Soccer Player of the Year when I was in school. And Mike said, if you're willing to go through some pain and suffering, you can be good at anything. If you're willing to go through enough pain and suffering, you can be good at anything. And that really resonated. That was like 2 years after that weight losing loss experience for myself. But that has just stuck with me. Like, if you're willing to go through enough pain and suffering, you can be good at anything, like anything you want, right? So, it's just an experience I carry with me as well.
How do you cut 22 pounds in that short amount of time?
You don't drink any water, right? You don't put any fluids in your body, and you just work out with sweatpants on and sweatshirt and hat, and time in the sauna. You can't even legally, you're not even allowed to sit in saunas anymore to make weight for wrestling. I mean, that's a taboo. It's just a thing you're not allowed to do. It's an NCAA rule. But that's what you do. I mean, stationary bike. Think about this: stationary bike inside of a sauna, Jesus. And you've got sweatpants on, 2-3 layers of shirts on, probably 2 pairs of sweatpants, 2-3 layers of up here on top. You got your hat, your winter hat on, and you just sit there and you ride that thing, and you just ride. You ride until you can't ride anymore, and then you get off and you sit for a while, and then you just have to keep your body moving. You just got to keep sweating. It's hell. Yeah, it was.
But that embodies what Fisher said to you.
Yeah, that's right. And it was a crucible experience for me, right? To know that I carry that with me, knowing that I can go do really, really hard things. And
right.
then on, flew home Sunday, Monday, class. Right. Nobody cares, Jim. Nobody cares what you did on Saturday, what you did on Friday to make weight. You just got to show up and go to class.
That is an amazing journey. When you get to the pinnacle and you become an All-American at the University of Virginia in wrestling, what's going through your mind then?
Oh, man. It's 15,000 people. The National Wrestling Championships are one of the top grossing revenue national championships of any NCAA sport. I think they're fourth or fifth. And so it's a big venue, right? And for me, it was at Penn State University, at their Bryce Jordan Arena up there. And so that's close to home for me growing up in Pittsburgh. So my high school coaches were there. All my friends were there. Of course, my parents were there, and family, my sisters. And it was just a fun, it was just this amazing experience for me. What I carry with me is that lesson of, focus on the process, not the outcome. But man, in the moment, it was just, it was the elation, right? It was hard to believe that moment that I had visualized for so long had actually come to fruition, and I was there and I was doing it and I was living it. And yeah, I just remember walking off the mat. Literally, so I always visualize that moment as this like, yeah, like running around the mat like this, hands in the air. But it was literally I was so exhausted. I had spent every ounce of energy to beat this kid. And I just laid there on the mat and I just struggled to get up to one knee. And then I looked over at my coaches and, the referees had to confer about something at the end of the match. And I gave one of these like thumbs up or thumbs down. Like, did I win or did I lose? I couldn't even stand up and like, hey, what happened? It was just like thumbs up, thumbs down. They're like, you got it. And I got one, I got my hand raised, and then I jumped into my coach's arms and, mom and dad came storming down out of the upper deck, and cheering me on. So it was a great experience. But I will say this, let's say I don't get that last takedown and the match goes into overtime and I lose. Does that change who I am? Right. And this gets back to, kind of putting on my coaching hat here, performance coaching hat, is like, would that failure have changed who I am? Gosh, I'd like to think that it wouldn't, right? It may have, right? Because I don't have that All-American plaque, which is, who knows where it's at right now. I don't know. But it's like, nobody cares about that anymore. But what I carry with me is those experiences, right? But I really encourage people to not think of their failure as a reason why they can't achieve success at whatever it is, right? And I was lucky enough to get that last takedown, and then I got on the podium, and that was a cool thing. But that was, it's a moment that I reflect back on, in that regard.
So much to unpack there. How about this question? When you're an All-American in baseball, maybe football or basketball, the future is probably really, really bright from a professional standpoint or an earning standpoint. Right. What is the future for an All-American fourth-year UVA wrestler from that particular sport?
Yeah, I signed $1 million contract right after national championships, got my shoe deal, went on to fame and fortune. What it opened up, the doors that opened up for me were getting into coaching. I had offers to coach at the Naval Academy and some other University of Pennsylvania right off the gate. I had opportunities to jump into as an assistant wrestling coach. And I actually didn't do either one of those.
Interesting.
I didn't take any of those offers. I was friends with a guy named Tane Nix, Christian Nix, who was a 4-time NCAA champion soccer player at UVA. And he was living in Guatemala at the time at a meditation center. And he's emailing me like pictures. He's like, man, this place is crazy. It's cool. It's like I go on all these adventures, and it's on this like lake that's this collapsed volcanic cauldron. The elevation of the surface of the lake was like 5,000 feet with just amazing, right? So I'm like, I'm going to go on an adventure. So I went home, painted houses for a few months, saved money living at mom and dad's, packed up a backpack, and I backpacked through Central America and just went on these grand adventures for 3 months. I had zero itinerary. I actually flew to Houston, took a bus to to Brownsville, Texas.
How much money did you have in your pocket?
I had about $3,000 saved up.
That is awesome.
So not a ton of money, but it's like it was enough. And I got so I was like, I was literally traveling on chicken buses. I was staying in hostels for like $5-6 a night. Just the time, the opportunity of a lifetime to do this, right? And it was great, so I took a cab across the border into Matamoros, Texas, Mexico, and it was game on, man. And I just hopped from town to town, village to village, all through Mexico, down through Guatemala, met up with Tane Nix, spent about 3 weeks at that meditation center, just hiking volcanoes, and actually did some scuba diving down there in that volcanic lake, and then headed off to Honduras and spent several weeks just traveling down through Honduras and Belize, and then kind of looped my way back up, and just experiences with, shaman medicine men and, scuba diving in a volcanic cauldron, scuba diving out off of Honduras and at night, hiking into, active volcanoes up into cloud forests, and just experience after experience. It was awesome.
What did you learn about yourself on this trip?
What did I learn about myself?
Because what are you, 22, 23?
Yeah, I'm 22 at that time. Yeah. And, I really, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. You know what I realized? Wrestling didn't define me. Wrestling, because nobody cared. All-American wrestling, who cares, right? Wrestling didn't define. It had defined me for the last 17 years, and on this trip, no one cares who you are, what you did, what you're about. You're just on this adventure, and when you're backpacking like that, there's a whole culture of these people. They're out there right now. Like as we sit here in Charlottesville doing this interview, there's this whole world, this whole culture of backpackers out there. You're never alone. Like I was rarely alone, right? I mean, even when I'm on like a chicken bus somewhere, you like stop at this little village and some, couple gringos jump on the bus and you're like, man, where are they from? And they're from, America or Canada or South Africa or Europe or wherever, right? And there's people, and they're all over the world doing this. And nobody cares what your background is, right? You're just there, you're in the moment, and just soaking up life as deeply and richly as you possibly can. And so, that's what I learned from that.
Pennsylvania is watching here. Susan Lynn Ennis. I'm so proud of
Miss
you.
Ennis.
Jim
She's my
Harshaw.
teacher. Yes.
Michelle Babuski.
Yeah.
Watching right now.
Yeah,
Jim,
Michelle,
you are
my
awesome.
goodness.
Such a stand-up
Flashbacks.
guy. Mark
My peeps.
Patiniski.
Yeah, Patinsky. He was a high school wrestling
Watching
teammate.
right now. Roger Voisinay, who's on the TEDx committee
That's
here in
right.
Charlottesville, is
Yeah.
watching. Clint Sponsler.
Yep.
Joyce
Pittsburgh
Smith.
F3.
Give it a like, give it a share. I count 6 states watching the program here. Throw this to you. Wrestling did not define you. I struggle with this. So 11 years, started this business in 2008.
Yeah.
Been doing this for 11 years and change. 2 businesses, the advertising agency, own a lot of this building, real estate investment. I have struggled with entrepreneurship and being this business owner and bricks and brands defining who I am.
Yeah.
Then I met my wife, and then really I watched my wife deliver our son. Things really changed once our son came into the world. Gave me perspective. So where I'm going with this is, when you put so much sweat equity and time and effort and set so many goals to make something like being an all-American wrestler or trying to run a business in the black and grow a business constantly, it oftentimes you get blinders on and it clouds your judgment in some ways because you need that razor focus to be successful. But that razor focus, while it creates success on what you're focused upon, distracts you from everything else that's going on in life that maybe certainly matters more. Throw that entire topic to you.
Yeah. That's the foundation of where my coaching program came from. So I was, the same way, right? We all deal with it, like in some way, shape, or form. Especially if you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're an athlete, like you have this identity that's aligned with that, right? And then if you fail or you somehow lose that, it's like, who am I, right? And I experienced that. So my first business was a success, sold it. Second business, it wasn't. Right, I raised angel capital locally here, and
I remember both. The first business was Cavalier Window Cleaning.
That's Albemarle Window Cleaning.
Albemarle Window Cleaning.
Right.
You sold it to the guy who does Advantage Handyman.
That's right.
And he's trying to build a vertically integrated company in the home space where he offers a lot of services, and it's run by an admin office that is able to support all of it.
That's right. You got it, man.
The second one, I think it was more of a tech online play.
That's right.
That it was geared to, and correct me if I'm wrong here, optimizing athletic programs. Was it from an efficiency or financial standpoint?
Both, mostly financial and marketing. Social media marketing.
I would love to hear these too.
Yeah. So the first business was was home services, like window cleaning, power washing, gutter cleaning, that sort of thing. And had 10 employees, 3 crews on the road. I ran it from home. I did the customer interfacing whenever I had to, but had an admin answering all the phones, and it was great. Wasn't my passion, but it was a fun business to build, and just learning through the school of hard knocks.
You were young.
Yeah, I like to call it young. So young gets that number for young, keeps getting older.
Sure, of course.
I'm 43 now, so I was young. I was 33 or so.
Okay.
30, or maybe even younger than that, 31. And that was great, learning how to build a business from scratch, and then sold that, started this other company, Riot Sports Marketing.
That's right.
And it had some traction, but not enough. Not enough to feed a growing family. So I had to pull the plug on it. And I realized as I was building that business, I had put everything into that, right? I had said no to my family and my relationships and my health and everything, And I got to a point where I was literally, as I was closing down the business, kind of looking for a job, saying to myself, how did I end up here? failed business, not, healthy relationships really is the level that I should have, wasn't, physically, I was probably the most unfit I'd ever been in my life at that point for an athlete, a former athlete. Like, that was not a good feeling. And I was like, well, I had, 2 degrees from the number 1 school in the country, All-American athlete, former Olympic hopeful, like all these great things, all these, youngest Division I head coach in the country, and started my first business. That was a success. Like, everything I touch is supposed to be successful, right?
The Midas touch.
Yeah, I get the Midas touch. And here I am, broken, and thinking like how did I get here? And what was, I reflected on what was in place in my life when I was competing at the highest level. And what am I missing now? Like, what are those pieces? And everybody says all these great lessons you learn from sports. And like, so how do I take those? What are those lessons first? And how do I take them and plug them into my life? And I did that. And it changed everything. I started focusing on my family. They became the number 1 priority in my life. Actually, God became the number 1 priority in my life, and my family right there with them. And got healthy again, ran a half marathon. That's when I did this got selected to do this TEDx talk, and, income tripled and just changed everything in my life. And so I ended up that was around the same time where I started this podcast called Success Through Failure, and interviewing, New York Times bestselling authors and billionaire investors and astronauts and Navy SEALs. And I come to realize, like, this framework, like this system isn't like a gym thing. It's like this universal framework for living life well and performing at an elite level. But here's the difference. When you're an elite athlete, like, you can have that single-minded focus. And entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs had that single-minded focus. He mowed down his relationships, right? Denied a child that was that was his, right?
Wore the same clothes every day.
Wore the same clothes every day, right?
Yeah.
Single-minded focus, but that single-minded focus doesn't work in the real world. Now you got kids, you got a family, you got business, you want to be healthy and fit. Like, you've got a million things pulling at you. And so you have to choose which are the right things to focus on. You can't just choose one, because then you end up with, broken relationships, or your health goes to the toilet, like everything falls apart. So that's what I've done with this framework is create this framework of living. And that's the basis of my coaching is living this balanced life with clarity, with balance, with consistency, and doing the things that we know we need to do, not just in one area, like not just in our business, or not just in our health, or not just in our relationships, but in all of them, right? And living this balanced life. So I don't even remember where we started that question.
No, it's amazing.
Went off on it. So.
It's amazing. Louise Long in Charlotte, North Carolina, welcome to the program. Nice. Bellamy Brown, ran for city council, welcome to the program. Right. Dr. Downey, thank you for watching. Ryan Goodrich, we have Austin, Texas, and Miami, Florida currently watching the show. We'll thank some of the folks that are giving commentary. Roy Rudy says this is a great dude.
He's the man.
If you'd like to relay any perspective to Jim, just put it in the chat box here. Broke and broken.
Yeah.
Tell me about the headspace at that time.
Yeah.
Because the Jim I know is like confident. And like the Jim I know, the energy comes into the room with him. You uplift people. You're a motivational guy. The Jim I know has vision. The Jim I know is a freaking winner. The Jim I know has the people around him, and you make the people around you better. I've known you not extremely well.
That guy.
10 years. Jim Harshaw I know is a badass. I mean that.
Appreciate that.
I mean that.
Yeah.
Broken.
That I used to be somebody.
I would say badass if it was your kids. It'd be a great dude or something like that. Broken. Tell me about the mindset.
Yeah, I appreciate all those kind words, but the truth is, everybody has these moments. And
True.
That's my whole mission in the world, is to pull back the curtain on really successful people. And that's what I do on my podcast, is pull back the curtain and go, look, this person who is all those things that you just said, like positive, confident, successful, all these things. And you pull back the curtain, you go, oh, okay, so their life is actually real too. They're vulnerable. They struggle. They have fear. They have self-doubt. They have this little voice in their head that they have to battle with. And nobody sees that, right? We say, hey, how you doing? Good. How you doing? Good. Okay, well, so-and-so's fine, right? Well, most people are fine. If you ask them, how are they? Well, fine. Yeah, good. Well, they're struggling with something. Everybody is struggling with something. And in that moment, right now I'm struggling with things. But in that moment, it was especially clear what I was struggling with. It wasn't balanced in my life, in every area of my life. None of them were in a good place. And that was a hard place to be, but I'm so thankful for that experience, because that experience has led, first it's been just an education for me, and now I'm able to share that and help lift other people and carry other people through that, right? And I work with some pretty amazingly successful people. I just got off the phone before this with a New York Times bestselling author.
For your podcast?
Yeah, for coaching. And I mean, I'm talking to successful people. They all have their challenges, man. They all struggle. I mean, I've coached Olympians and former NFL players and, neurosurgeons who are killing it. And you just go, man, they're challenges, right? Everybody has those challenges. So, and that was a particular, I have them now, I'll have them for the rest of my life. I know that. But that was a particularly tough moment.
Kevin Higgins has a question for you. Kevin, we will get to this question in a matter of moments. Before we do, I'm going to throw this to you.
North Carolina, I think.
How did having the Midas touch cloud your judgment in any capacity? What I mean by this, you are an All-American wrestler. You're the youngest Division I wrestling coach in NCAA at 26. You start a business, exit the business successfully. In a lot of ways, the dream for an entrepreneur is to exit successfully a business. You're launching your second business, serial entrepreneur, and as you're launching your second business, how did having that success cloud your judgment by chance?
Yes, I think it did, especially in the business side of things. There, it was like, I started my last business, and it was hard, right? And I had to work my tail off and invest a lot to get it from $0 in revenue up to where it was when we sold it. And I was like, when I started this other company on the side, I thought it was going to be easier.
Easy sailing?
Yeah, and it's like I feel like most things are like that. It's almost like when you look back, and if you knew going in how hard it was going to be, a lot of times I think I'm speaking for myself, maybe it's like, man, I don't know if I would have gone into it.
You would have done
known,
it.
Right? Had I actually known, but thank goodness that I did it, right? And even in my business now, I mean, I built my coaching business and podcast and speaking. I built that on the side. It was so hard. It took years to build to the point where it could be a full-time thing, a viable option for me. And would I have done that had I known it was going to be so hard? I don't know. I'd like to think so, but it's hard. Yeah. So did that cloud my judgment? Probably. Having gone through a lot of failures as a wrestler, I kind of knew that failure was always possible. Always possible. Yeah. And I will share that pops one quote into my head from one of my podcast interviews with a world champion wrestler, a guy named Jaden Cox. He said, once I realized that failure was an option, it took this huge weight off my back and I could compete at my highest level.
Oh, tell me about that.
It's like failure. So he came to this realization that that we always say, failure's not an option. Well, actually it is, right? And when you realize, when you become okay with that and understand that, well, failure's an option, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person, doesn't mean, I have to lose my identity that we already talked about. It just means that's a real possibility here. I'm not planning on it, of course, but once you kind of embrace that and go, oh, okay, well, what if failure did happen? Well, I guess I would be okay. Right? Kind of Tim Ferriss has the fear setting experiment he talks about, right? And when you do that fear setting and you go and you evaluate, like, what is the worst case scenario? If I fail at this, am I going to lose my home and my family and my job and no one's going to love me anymore and I'm going to die homeless, penniless, and 20 pounds overweight, as Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live used to say? Well, no, it's like, usually worst case scenario is something far, far less than that, right? And so, so once you come to that realization that failure is an option, it allows you to take this pressure off and put it aside and go, I'm just going to, I still have my goal, my clear goal, and I'm going to work towards it, knowing that, failure could happen, but man, I'm going to put everything I have into it. And when you focus on that process and let go of that, have the outcome in mind, but let go of it. Stephen Covey said, start with the end in mind, right? You start with that end in mind, and then you focus on the process. You build the process, and that's what you focus on. And then hopefully you get there. But when you become okay with what could happen potentially, it allows you to be fully yourself and be free and authentic and put your full energy into something.
We have a couple questions coming in. This one's coming from Kevin Higgins, watches the show routinely, says, love this interview. I'm curious for your guests, what role does passion play in success? Is it something you can obtain, or does it just come naturally to people?
That's
a good question.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Everybody thinks that passion is just like you have a passion, right? And there's only one course for you in your life. It's your passion. You have to follow it. And if you don't follow it, then you're not living a great life. Well, it's like, no, that's not true. Like you can create passions, right? I have a friend who he's passionate about playing the game of bridge, and he's, if not world class, he's one of the better players in the country in the United States, and he discovered that passion, in college, right? Well, what if he didn't discover that? Is that his only path in life? Well, no, it's not. So passion plays a role, but you also have to give yourself the opportunity. Yeah, everybody has passions, right? We all have some kind of passion, but give yourself the chance to try other things, to try new things, to experiment, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm passionate about the line of work that I do, but maybe there's something, but I'm not fulfilled. Well, try a different line of work, try a different company, try a different, coming at it from a different angle. You can do all these sort of, it's called prototyping experiences. It's from a book called Designing Your Life. Can't remember the podcast episode number on top of my head, but I interviewed the authors of that book, Stanford design professors, and they talk about this. It's like these prototyping experiences where you go have coffee with somebody who's doing what you want to do, or something you think, I'm kind of interested in that. Maybe it could become a passion. It could become your life's passion. So you don't have just one passion. Go try something new. Go have coffee with somebody who's doing what you want to do. Go read a book on it. Go shadow somebody for a day or an hour or something like that, and go test and sample different experiences. And you might just find there are other passions out there for you. That said, to do hard things, yeah, it has to be connected with your goals, have to be connected with your values. In the real world nowadays, you see so many people setting goals based on, not on their passion, not on what's in here, but they set goals based on what's parked in their neighbor's driveway, or what they see on social media, or what they see in the mass media, right? Not on what's here, right? What they care about, their core values, their principles inside, their passions, right? And when you set your goals aligned with those, then, failure is an option, and that's quite all right, because it's not going to affect you. You're going to keep on going. Failure doesn't change what's important to you.
Tim Monk has a comment for you. Jerry, we're watching at our law firm in Nashville, Tennessee. We're on our lunch break. I love your show. I'm UVA class of 2010. I'm itching to get back to Charlottesville. Can you ask your guests if you have to, speaking of passion, if you have to make your profession something you're passionate about?
Okay, I'm going to cut it off right there. A little bit of a cliffhanger. I'm going to answer that question for you in the next episode. Cut this into 2 shows for you, just for your listening convenience. And as I mentioned, you can grab your copy of the action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. As you can hear already, I share some things that I've never shared before publicly. And I think that what I share as an answer to this question, as well as some of the other questions that Jerry asks, is going to be really helpful for you. So I encourage you to listen to the next episode as well. Until then, as always, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.